And one more Stanford story, and then another guy, because there's so much cash out there in that valley that you just don't know. I mean, it's ridiculous, the amount of VCs and everything else. Another guy, I actually had a young guy with me on this call, and it was a renewal, and go in, and we had done a few things differently, and packaged the basketball. We made this football on-field hospitality, and I said, well, here's the deal. This is what we're doing. You know, and we've been used to people screaming at us for a couple weeks, and he said, okay, all right, hold on. Gets up, goes back to his office, comes back with one of those big like checkbooks, you know, with the whatever. Says, who do I make this out to? And stroked me a check for $50,000 and went on my way. And of course, I'm like, the kids look at me like, wow, you're good. You know? I was like, this happens all the time, you know. You know, but again, this is a long answer to, I guess, our process, which is a long conversation. But I think all those things in terms of preparation, breaking it down, understanding it, I mean, hopefully you have, we have screening matches from, within these sessions that go on, which that creates the belief. And if I don't think, when we're going through this process, if I don't think the sales team, the GM, director of sales, the A's, they're going to be on the ground selling it, if I can tell they're like thinking I'm running over them, convincing them, then we'll keep going. Because again, it doesn't matter if that I think it's worth this. It really, we'll start over. So that in and of itself, time, targets, people, inventory, and if you run through those and you always balance it against what the market's telling you and make adjustments. We start out with these roadmaps and charts and I'll analyze things to death. But once we go, once we say, okay, are we ready? Then it's go time. And you violently attack and then maybe after the first quarter, once we've got, we'll adjust. We'll come back and say, okay, how can we tweak this a little bit? But in our case, it could be 18 months, ideally. And there's a lot of contracts, quite frankly, that someone calls and says, hey, the bid's coming out next week. What's it for? Next year. Next year, like the following year? No, like next year. We thought you'd come. And you just go, look, I can't do it. Doesn't fit for us. And so if it has to be for next year, that's probably not going to be a good opportunity. Doesn't fit into our model. A little bit about us and knowing who we are and knowing how we can serve. Because for us, I want to make sure that we're doing every single one. If we're going to do it, make sure we do it right and make sure we can do it to the best of what we've told the client and to what we expect from ourselves and our model. Any questions about that? I guess from the college space, and what's our time check, Jim? Okay. Any questions on the college or?
Dave, Stephen, you say you're from the Tidewater area, and you do play integral part in CBS Sports. I see how you guys have OU. How come you haven't expanded to like small schools, like maybe Norfolk State or University or anybody like within like the MEAC? Right. Since it's right there in that kind of.
Well, it's Old Dominion's a little unique. It's the value proposition for Old Dominion. I don't know enough about, quite frankly, all of the. Well, I do know. I know I'm from Virginia. I know other schools are in that conference. JMU, I love it. Great, a lot of success. But targets, back to what I said earlier. They have lots of success, but the target base in the Shenandoah Valley is not there. So even Old Dominion, from an athletic perspective and success and all those things that you may say, well, they're the same. Richmond won a national championship. But it all goes into trying to figure out what, under any model, and that's kind of the first way. Under any model, regardless of whether it's outsourced or in-house or me or somebody else, what's the total value of that? And to some extent, Old Dominion is a little bit of an anomaly because from a capacity standpoint for us, we're pretty entrenched in all those sponsors, all those models, so we were able to work something out where maybe the revenues aren't quite as large, but again, we had excess capacity. It made sense for us, with our relationships that we could probably execute that contract a lot more efficiently. If it was a similar size, scope, and deal of Old Dominion in Nebraska, where from a business standpoint, there's risk, there's time, there's energy, there's relationships that aren't existing there, and the margins are also very thin. it gets real tough. And I mean, and even in Norfolk State, you know, because we don't have really any excess management capacity just because there's Old Dominion. It's us and then Old Dominion. So we'd be evaluating Norfolk State no different than we'd be evaluating USC. Even though it's easier for me to drive down there, my parents would like it, although they're going to be here tonight, so I won't say anything. But sometimes I got Old Dominion, they don't know about it either. But you know, it's still the same, other than the distance you have to go. And at the end of the day, that's probably the way our model is set up. Again, not everybody's. The way we're set up, it's just, I mean, Old Dominion, I mean, not probably as a percentage of, I mean, LSU is the grand behemoth of startup, energy, time, effort on every front. I'll tell you a lesson we learned. We did Utah right after LSU. We took all of our ideas that we just loved at LSU, Tiger One, and all this other stuff that that worked great, and we pretty much tried to do all of them at Utah. Our staff at LSU is 16? 13. Our staff at Utah is 3. And so I think we quickly had to somewhat learn that, okay, you know, even though it can generate revenue, we also got to be very cognizant of, you know, how are we going to implement, how are we going to execute, et cetera. So it's all really time, resources, and at the end of the day, being real disciplined in what you think you can really get. I mean, it's all about the numbers. I mean, and that's all this other stuff. I mean, you got to have these other things. You got to have a relationship with the school. You got to deliver. You got to have great people. When it comes down to making the types of investments that you have to make long term, I mean, guarantees for every year, you better make sure you can make the numbers work. At least that's how I'm evaluated. Every year, some cases every quarter. One of the downsides to maybe being part of a larger company, but all the benefits of, you know, being able to go out, and if you do that, you know, do it right. Anything else in the college sandbox? Just a couple, these are buckets of questions that you all sent in. You know, talking about my military experience, I think maybe a couple things just real quickly. I did spend 6 years in the Army after graduating from undergrad. For me, it was a couple things. It was a maturity accelerant, I'll tell you. You grow up in a hurry with that type of responsibility. It's probably the one type of job where you are right out of the gate, you know, given, you know, an extraordinary amount of responsibility financially, in terms of the assets under your management and care, not to mention certainly the leadership of families and soldiers and everything else. So, you know, I don't know if I appreciated that as much when I was doing it as I may today. And I know that everyone yearns to be in charge and to want to do all of that, and it's very difficult. So I think from that perspective, invaluable. And I probably didn't appreciate it enough until later. I think modeling and sort of the way I look at the business, I actually dug this out. I won't read it to you, but I found this, you know, FM 25-100 Training the Force manual. And the medal, which is what I've used, it's a mission essential task list. And the nice thing about the military is this: they keep it simple. I mean, they have to. There are a lot of manuals, but they are very simple to execute and simple to understand, which in sales, as complicated as I may try and make this, it's not that hard. Okay, you know, once you have a system, if you do it right, you do it hard, it's not that difficult. But the concept of the medal is this: do essential things first. There's not enough time for the commander to do everything. Each commander will have to determine wisely what is essential and assign responsibilities for accomplishment. He should spend the remaining time on near essentials. This is especially true of training. Non-essentials should not take up time for essentials. I mean, it's priorities. It's time. It's making sure that with limited amount of resources, in the military, it's guns and ammo and people and land and training time. Here, it's those 4 I talked about: time, targets, talent, and inventory. How do you best maximize those? in our business, we call it EFAs, and I won't go into all of that, but I've sort of taken a little piece of that, and the way we structure our business, we have 8 things that we have to do, and we have to do them all well to be successful. There's not one of them that if we don't do it to our standard will not impact